The Pulsar Dawn's bridge hummed with the low thrum of emergency power. Amber panels cast long shadows across the consoles. The air bit at Captain Indira Voss's throat with every breath. Ozone and recycled coolant left a metallic film on her tongue. She stood at the command rail, one hand gripping the cold metal. Her scar pulled tight against her brow. "Report," she said. The junior sensor operator looked up from his station. His name was Sato, 22 years old and still twitchy at the edges. "Anomaly resolved, Captain, reading a ring structure, approximately 7 kilometers in diameter, orbiting the stellar corpse." Voss squinted at the main display. The star was a cold ember long dead. A faint glow of residual heat traced its surface like embers in ash. The ring hung in perfect silence against the black. No running lights, no power signature, no transmissions. "Age?" she asked. Sato's fingers moved across the board. "Hard to pin down, but the dust accretion and micrometeorite scarring suggest millions of years, maybe tens of millions." A door hissed open behind her, heavy footsteps approached. "We have to go look at that." Voss did not turn. She knew the voice. She knew the hunger in it. "Dr. Nix," she said. "I was wondering how long it would take you." Thalia Nix stepped up beside her. The woman's fingers were stained dark at the tips. Circuit grease smeared her left cuff. Her eyes were fixed on the ring, and they were bright. "Captain, that structure is not natural. The orbital mechanics are too precise. The material composition, look at that spectral readout." She pointed at a secondary screen. "That is not asteroid debris. That is manufactured alloy. Nothing in the Federation database matches those isotopes." Voss turned to face her. "You want to go inside?" "I want to know what left that behind." Thalia's voice dropped. "This is older than any known civilization. I have a name for the force that built it, the Flux. They were an ancient race that folded reality itself. Their works left behind a faint energy signature my instruments can detect. The residue is fading, but it is real." Voss frowned. "The Flux. A placeholder, a label. The point is, there was another civilization before them, the architects. They fought the Flux and lost. The ring is a remnant of that conflict." Thalia's eyes gleamed. "That ring was powered by something we do not understand." Curran Bellamy moved silently to the weapons console. He did not speak. He did not need to. His presence was a question. Voss looked at him. "What do you think, Curran?" The former soldier's voice was flat. "I think we do not know what it is. I think we should scan it from here and file a report. By the time a Federation survey team gets out here, the trail will be cold," Thalia said. "You know how slow they move, months, years, and the trace energy is already degrading. Every hour we wait, we lose data." Voss watched her. The woman was trembling, not with fear, with the same fire that had driven humanity out of the solar system in the first place. "The away team," Voss said slowly. "You, Curran, and 2 engineers, you take recordings, you take samples. You do not touch anything that looks like a control mechanism. You are in and out in 60 minutes. Understood?" Thalia was already moving. "Understood." The cargo bay airlock cycled with a groan of seals. Voss watched from the bridge display as the 4 figures crossed the gap between the Pulsar Dawn and the ring. The structure's surface was rough with eons of impact scars. No light reflected from its hull. It drank photons like a shadow. Thalia's voice crackled over the comm. "We are entering the structure. The interior is intact. No sign of decompression damage. The atmosphere is thin but breathable." Voss leaned forward. "Stay sharp." The camera feed showed a corridor of black stone. Walls curved inward at angles that hurt to look at. The floor was covered in a fine gray dust. Their magnetic boots left prints that would last forever. Curran walked point. His rifle was up. His head moved in slow scans. "Chamber ahead," he said. "Large, central." The camera turned. Voss felt her breath catch. The chamber was vast. The ceiling vanished into darkness. But the floor was covered in frozen crystal formations. They rose like teeth, like grave markers. Each one caught the suit lights and threw them back in shattered rainbows, and in the center, on a pedestal of black stone, sat a sphere. It was the size of a human fist, dark, non-reflective. It seemed to drink the light around it. Thalia stepped forward. "Dr. Nix," Curran said, "you said you would not touch anything." "I said I would not touch a control mechanism. That is not a control mechanism. That is a beacon." "How do you know?" "I know." Her voice was strange, distant. She reached out. Voss opened her mouth to order her to stop. Thalia's fingers closed around the sphere. The hum started low, below hearing. Voss felt it in her teeth, in the bones of her skull. The bridge lights flickered. The display glitched. On the camera feed, the sphere emitted a thin line of pale light. It rose from the surface, turned once, and pointed outward, through the chamber wall, toward some fixed point in the black. Thalia did not move. Her face was frozen, her lips parted slightly. "It was waiting for us," she whispered. The ring groaned, low at first, then louder, a sound like wounded metal, like a dying animal trying to stand. Curran grabbed Thalia's arm. "We need to leave now." The crystal formations began to crack, light bled from the fractures. The floor vibrated beneath their boots. Voss slammed her palm on the comm. "Away team, return to ship. Emergency extraction. Move." They ran, the corridor behind them buckled. Stone ground against stone, dust plumed into the air. The camera feed cut to static. Voss stared at the black screen. Her heart pounded against her ribs. She could feel something pressing against the edges of her consciousness. A presence, old, patient, aware. "Bring us around," she said. "Full burn to the extraction point. Prep the engines for emergency jump." Sato's hands flew across his console. "Course plotted. The ring is collapsing inward. I am reading a gravity spike. It is creating a singularity. Then we leave before it swallows us." The Pulsar Dawn lurched. Alarms screamed. The deck tilted under Voss's feet. The cargo bay door cycled open. 3 figures stumbled through, then a 4th. Curran carried Thalia across the deck. Her hand was still wrapped around the sphere. The pale light still pointed. "Jump," Voss said. Now the stars stretched, compressed, vanished. The ship entered subspace with a shudder that rattled every panel. Voss let out a breath she did not realize she had been holding. Tactical display showed their new position. Safe, clear, but the compass's light had not dimmed. It pointed steadily toward a new star, a yellow dwarf. Human charts called it Sol. Thalia sat up on the deck. Her face was pale. Her eyes were wide. "It found what it was looking for," she said. "The compass, it was calibrated to a destination. The ring was just the delivery mechanism." Voss looked at her. "Delivering what?" Before Thalia could answer, Sato's voice cut through the bridge. "Captain, I am receiving a transmission from that star, from Earth. It is a repeating signal." Voss felt ice crawl down her spine. "What kind of signal?" Sato turned. His face was ashen. "It is a 3-note sequence. It matches the human emergency distress call." The compass's light pulsed once, twice. A rhythm, a response. The bridge was silent. Voss stared at the sphere, at the light that pointed home, at the signal that should not exist. Something from the prison had been looking for them, and now it had found what it needed. The lab lights were too bright. Thalia Nix blinked hard and bent closer to the containment field. Her breath fogged the transparent barrier. The void compass sat in the center of a cradle of humming emitters. It was perfectly still, perfectly black. It drank the light. She had run every diagnostic the Pulsar Dawn possessed. Spectral analysis returned nothing. Density scans gave her a number that matched no element on any periodic table she knew. Neutron imaging showed only a void. The sphere absorbed every particle she threw at it. Nothing reflected, nothing escaped. Thalia muttered to herself. She had never broken the habit. "Not metal, not crystal, not degenerate matter. What are you?" She reached for the containment controls. She did not intend to touch the sphere. She just wanted to adjust the emitter frequency. "Don't." Curran Bellamy stood at the lab doorway. His arms were crossed. His broad frame filled the opening. His voice was low. His eyes were fixed on her hands. "I am not going to touch it," she said. "You are thinking about it." She stared at him. He stared back. He had that talent, the soldier's stare that never flinched, never blinked first. She broke first. "Fine, I am thinking about it. That does not mean I will." Curran stepped into the room. He moved the way he did everything, controlled, economical, each foot placed like he was counting the distance. He stood beside her and looked down at the compass. "It is brighter," he said. Thalia glanced at the sphere. The thin line of pale light on its surface had thickened. She had not noticed it pulsing. Now she saw it, a slow rhythm like a heartbeat made of illumination. She checked the sensor readout. "The containment field is holding, no variance in output. It is just visible now. It is doing something. It has always done something. It points, that is its function." Curran did not look away from the sphere. "It is doing something new." Before Thalia could answer, the console chimed. An incoming transmission. She tapped the acceptance key. Xylos's form resolved in the air above the workstation. The Flintshard appeared as a hologram. The effect was still unsettling. Its body was a cluster of polished black crystals. Each shard ground against the next as it adjusted position. The sound translated through the speakers as a low rumble, like stone shifting underground. It had no face. Its voice came from everywhere at once. Modulated vibrations that pressed against the ears. "Dr. Nix, You must surrender the object immediately. Thalia straightened. She did not look at Curran. She did not need to. She could feel his attention shift to the hologram. Surrender it to whom? She asked. To the Flintshard concordance. The object is a shard of instability. It does not belong in the hands of a species that does not understand it. Thalia's jaw tightened. I understand it better than I did 6 hours ago. It is a compass. It points to something. The direction shifts like the target is moving. That means the target is alive or at least aware. This is a key, not a trigger. The distinction is meaningless. Xylos's crystals ground together, a sound like gravel being crushed. You are holding a device that broadcasts. Every moment it remains active, it announces its location to entities you cannot comprehend. Entities? Curran spoke for the first time. His voice was flat. What entities? Xylos did not answer immediately. The hologram flickered, the pause stretched. Zelix stepped into the frame. The insectoid diplomat had been standing in the corner of the lab. Its amber carapace caught the light. Its compound eyes reflected Thalia's image back at her in fragmented patterns. Its antennae twitched. Perhaps, Zelix said, we should discuss this with less urgency. The human vessel has not broken any Federation protocols. They discovered the artifact in neutral space. They have a right to study it. Joint research could benefit all parties. No, Xylos's word was a low frequency, almost a physical pressure in the room. Zelix's antennae flattened. The Federation Charter explicitly guarantees. I do not answer to your charter. Xylos's crystals ground harder. The sound rose in pitch. The Flintshard Concordance encountered this object before. It was not a discovery. It was a catastrophe. Thalia felt her skin prickle. She looked at the compass. The line of light was pulsing faster now, faster than her own heart. What catastrophe? She asked. Xylos's form shifted. One of the larger crystals rotated to face her directly. There was no eye, no lens, but Thalia felt observed, pinioned. 112 Flintshard minds have been consumed by the entity this device tracks. We called it the dissonance. It feeds on coherent thought. It dismantles networked consciousness. We believed we had sealed it away. We placed the prison in a system with no routes, no relays, no traffic. The crystals stopped grinding. The silence that followed was worse. You have just called it back. Thalia's throat went dry. She shook her head. No, the compass points. It does not summon. It is a locator, not a beacon. Then why is it transmitting? Curran asked. She turned to look at him. He was not looking at the hologram. He was looking at the compass. The light on its surface traced a path, faster now, pulsing with visible urgency. Thalia checked the console. Her hands found the keys. The data scrolled. The ship's AI spoke. A calm, synthetic voice. Unidentified signal lock detected. The artifact is actively transmitting to a location 5.3 light-years distant. Transmission protocol matches a phased array return. Repeat, the artifact is not receiving a signal. It is sending one. Thalia stared at the readout. The numbers made sense. The implications did not. We need to shut it down, Curran said. She reached for the containment field power controls. Her hand was shaking. She did not know when it had started. She twisted the key. The compass did not dim. The line of light grew brighter. It cut through the dark of the sphere like a wound opening. The containment field is offline, the AI reported. The artifact continues to transmit. Power source unknown, internal, self-sustaining. Thalia felt the room tilt. She had studied enough alien technology to know that self-sustaining meant one thing. The device was not dependent on the ship. It was not dependent on anything. It was a closed system. It had been waiting. Xylos's hologram flickered again. The crystal structure shifted. For a moment, Thalia saw something in the gaps between the shards. A darkness, a wrongness. You have done what cannot be undone. Xylos's voice dropped to a frequency Thalia felt in her chest. The dissonance is aware of the lock. It is already moving. The connection cut. The air in the lab went dead. No hum, no grinding, no vibration. The silence pressed against Thalia's ears like a physical weight. She turned to Curran. We did not find it, she said. Her voice sounded small. It found us. Curran's face did not change, but his hand moved to his sidearm. Explain. The compass was not hidden. It was placed. Someone wanted it found. She looked at the sphere. It pulsed with steady, patient light. We thought we discovered an artifact. We found a trap. The bait was millions of years old, and we took it. The ship's alarms blared. The sound was a sharp, rising wail that split the silence. Red light flooded the lab. The AI's voice returned, no longer calm. Warning, unidentified FTL emergence at system edge. Mass exceeds detection threshold. Object is now decelerating on intercept course. Zelix's mandibles clicked together in a pattern Thalia had learned to recognize as distress. What object? The AI paused, a human pause, an engineered hesitation. Object matches no known vessel classification. Composition is null matter and stone. Null matter is a substance that cancels energy. It is dark and cold. The stone is ancient, warped by forces unknown. Structural integrity is compromised. A breach is present along the equatorial axis. Thalia forced herself to look at the display panel. The tactical hologram resolved. A shape so large it made the Pulsar Dawn look like a grain of dust against a mountain. Dark, cold, cracking open. Curran grabbed her arm. His grip was iron. "Thalia, what is it?" She could not look away from the image. The shape was wrong. The proportions were wrong. It was built by something that did not share the galaxy's geometry. "It is the prison," she whispered. "He dragged it here, through FTL, the whole thing." "And the breach?" She did not want to answer. The words came anyway. "It is open." The compass on the table pulsed one last time. The light went dark. The sphere sat still, silent, exhausted. Its work was done. The dissonance had arrived. The grating sound of Shard 9's crystals scraping against the floor filled Xylos's vessel. The spherical craft of fused obsidian plates hummed with a low, steady resonance. Xylos stood in the pitch black. It read the pressure waves that served as its vision. The cold of the void seeped through the hull, a constant reminder of what drifted nearby. Xylos analyzed the data again. The dissonance prison was failing. A tendril had escaped. Not the full entity, not yet, but the tendril would grow, it would feed. It craved coherent thought, structured consciousness. Any mind that operated within logical parameters. The Flintshard Concordance had encountered this before. 112 minds consumed, dismantled from within. The memory alone caused Xylos's internal vibration to shift, from a steady hum to an irregular tremor. It accessed the hidden archive. The data was buried deep, locked behind protocols that even the Concordance had not fully mapped. The architects, they were the only species to successfully fight the dissonance. They did not use logic, they did not use order, they used chaos. The archive fragment was incomplete. It described patterns that did not resolve, signals that followed no known syntax, weapons that produced outputs the dissonance could not predict. Xylos could not understand how chaos could defeat a mind-eater. The dissonance fed on coherence. It needed structure to consume. Chaos should have been irrelevant, but the architects were gone, and their method had worked. The communication link crackled. Zelix's voice trembled through the channel, a buzzing vibration that clashed with the vessel's resonance. "Xylos, I have analyzed the human biological data. You need to hear this." Xylos turned its attention to the link. "Speak." "Humans cannot suppress their emotional states during crisis," Zelix said. "It is not a choice. Their physiology does not allow it. When threatened, their bodies produce compounds that amplify psychological intensity. Fear becomes focus. Anger becomes fuel. They do not calm down, they burn hotter." Xylos vibrated with disbelief. "That is not a weapon. That is the very thing the dissonance feeds on. Uncontrolled emotion is chaos without direction. It is raw data, consumable." "The dissonance feeds on coherent thought," Zelix replied. "Structured intelligence, logical progression. The human emotional state is not coherent. It is erratic. It spikes and drops and contradicts itself. The dissonance may not be able to parse it." Xylos ground its crystals together. The sound was sharp, discordant. It had no word in its language for what it felt. The closest translation was anxiety, but it was not that. It was something deeper, a fracture in certainty. "Emotion is not chaos," Xylos said. "It is a pattern, a predictable one. Every species experiences threat response. The dissonance has consumed thousands of minds. It has seen every variation of fear." Zelix's voice dropped. "Not human fear. I have watched their recordings. When a human is afraid, their heart rate increases. Their breathing changes, but they do not freeze. They move. They act. They do things that make no logical sense. They charge at threats instead of fleeing. They sacrifice themselves for others. They fight harder when injured." Xylos fell silent. The archive fragment flickered in its memory. The architects had used chaos, not the chaos of randomness, but the chaos of impossible action, the thing that should not happen but did. Shard 9 scraped across the floor, its crystals ground together in agitation. "Emissary, the human ship has changed course." Xylos turned to face the subordinate. "Where are they moving?" "Directly toward the prison." Xylos analyzed the telemetry. The human vessel, the Pulsar Dawn, was accelerating on an intercept trajectory. Its power levels were spiking erratically. The energy signature did not follow standard combat protocols. It fluctuated. It surged and dropped without clear reason. And the biosigns. The crew's biological readings were extreme. Adrenaline levels near toxic. cortisol spiking beyond normal stress response, heart rates at failure thresholds. Their bodies were in crisis. Their minds were under duress, and yet the ship was accelerating. Xylos watched the data stream. The humans were not fleeing, they were not retreating, they were not seeking safety. They were moving toward the prison, toward the thing that consumed minds. They were attacking. Xylos's vibration shifted again. The irregular tremor became something else, something it could not name. The humans were generating a signal that defied classification. Their emotional chaos was not random. It was a pattern that followed no known syntax. The dissonance fed on order, on structure, on the predictable flow of conscious thought. Human emotion was none of those things. Xylos whispered in a language that had no word for admiration. The sound was soft, barely above a vibration. They are the architect's successors. The archive fragment had described chaos, but Xylos had never understood what that meant. Not until now. The architects did not fight the dissonance with superior logic. They fought it with the one thing it could not consume. The unpredictable, the irrational, the thing that made no sense. Humans were that thing. Shard 9 scraped closer. Emissary, the human ship has entered the prison's debris field. Xylos opened the external sensors. The image was faint, filtered through pressure waves and distance, but it was clear enough. The Pulsar Dawn was weaving through the wreckage of ancient structures. Its hull was damaged. Its weapons ports were open, but the weapons had been modified. Xylos zoomed in. The human ship had jury-rigged its primary cannon into something else, something new. The energy signature was not a standard projectile. It was not a beam. It was a waveform, a pulse that followed a biological rhythm, a heartbeat, Captain Voss's heartbeat. The weapon fired. The pulse shot out, a wave of pressure and light that propagated through the void. It struck the dissonance tendril. The entity recoiled. Xylos saw it happen. The tendril writhed. It withdrew. It collapsed in on itself, as if the pulse had caused physical pain. The dissonance could not parse the signal. It was not coherent. It was not logical. It was the raw, unfiltered output of a human under extreme stress. It was fear and fury and determination all at once. A data type the ancient mind had never encountered. The old rules had just been broken. Xylos stood in the darkness of its vessel. The cold pressed against the hull. The hum of its crystals was the only sound. Zelix's voice crackled through the link. "Xylos, what just happened?" Xylos did not answer. It watched the human ship power through the debris field. Its weapons fired again. The pulse was stronger this time, the captain's heartbeat accelerating. The dissonance recoiled further. The humans were winning, and Xylos had no framework for what that meant. The engine room of the Pulsar Dawn was a cage of noise and heat. Curran Bellamy felt it in his teeth. The vibration of the reactor shook through the deck plates and up into his spine. His hands were slick with sweat as he gripped the edge of an open power conduit. The smell of overheated wiring filled the air, acrid and sharp, coating the back of his throat. He had 6 minutes. Thalia's voice crackled through his earpiece. "Curran, I need you to listen carefully." "I am listening." He pulled a panel free and exposed the frequency modulator. His fingers moved from memory. There was no time to consult a schematic. "The dissonance feeds on predictable thought," Thalia said. Her voice was strained. "It latches onto sequences, order, logic. That is how it consumes. It reads the pattern of a mind and follows it like a thread. And emotion breaks the pattern." Curran said it as a fact, not a question. "Yes, the architects defeated it with chaos, pure, unstructured chaos. The dissonance cannot parse it." A pause. "Human emotion is the most chaotic signal I have ever measured. Our fear spikes are erratic. Our anger has no clean waveform. We are unpredictable in ways the dissonance cannot process." Curran pulled a cable free and began rerouting it to the cannon's fire control. "So you want me to turn the main gun into a broadcast system?" "I want you to let the crew's emotional state modulate the weapon's frequency," Thalia corrected. "Let the dissonance taste what we are, all of it." He stopped moving. His hand hovered over the conduit. "You mean weaponized insanity?" "I mean weaponized humanity." Curran exhaled slowly. Then he got back to work. The ship shuddered. Voss's voice came through the comm, barely audible above the engine noise. "Bellamy, I need a status. We are 30 seconds from close pass. If that cannon does not fire when we reach the breach, we do not get a second shot." "I am working." He slammed a panel shut and moved to the main junction box. "The cannon will fire, but the power draw—" He ran the numbers in his head. The reactor could handle it, barely, for one shot. "What about the power draw?" Voss asked. Curran did not answer. He calculated instead. The modified weapon would draw 30% above safe operating levels. The cooling system would fail within 90 seconds of sustained fire. The reactor would hit critical temperature in 2 minutes. 30% chance of catastrophic failure. His hand rested on the manual override. The safety systems were designed to prevent exactly this scenario. They would shut the reactor down before it melted. That was the protocol. That was the responsible decision. He flipped the override. The safety systems went dark. The cooling cycle slowed. The reactor temperature began to climb. The ship shuddered again, harder this time. Alarms started blaring, low, urgent tones that vibrated through the deck. "Bellamy." Voss's voice was flat. That sounded like a structural warning. It was. He wiped sweat from his forehead and checked the weapon's charge sequence. "The cannon is online. I am feeding the biofeedback loop now. When you fire, the frequency will shift based on real-time emotional data from the bridge crew." A pause, then Voss said, "You bypassed the safety systems." "Yes, without telling anyone." "Yes." Another pause, longer this time. Curran watched the temperature gauge climb past the yellow line into orange. "The reactor will melt down in 1 minute and 45 seconds, he said. "You have one shot, maybe two, make them count." Voss did not argue. She did not thank him. She just said, "Stand by," and the line went silent. Curran stood in the heat and the noise. The vibration was in his bones now. He could feel the reactor pulsing like a second heart. The temperature gauge crept higher. He thought about his daughter. He had not seen her in 3 years. He had left her with his sister when he signed on for this mission. The plan was to return in 6 months. The plan had not accounted for ancient prisons and psychic horrors and a captain who looked at certain death and called it an opportunity. He pushed the thought aside. It was a pattern, predictable. The dissonance would feed on it. The ship's intercom crackled, Voss's voice, "Coming up on the breach, firing in 10 seconds. Curran grabbed a handhold. The deck tilted as the Pulsar Dawn banked hard. 5 seconds. He watched the reactor temperature. Red line, 45 seconds to meltdown. 3. The vibration changed. The ship's hull groaned. 2. Curran held his breath. Fire. The shot went out. Even in the engine room, he felt it. The entire ship lurched, as if something had grabbed it and pulled. The lights flickered. The reactor screamed. A high-pitched whine that cut through the engine noise. On the bridge, the beam that left the cannon was not clean. It was not stable. It flickered and pulsed and twisted. Every spike in its waveform matched a spike in Voss's rising anger. The frequency shifted as her heartbeat quickened. The beam splintered and reformed and struck the prison's breach with the raw, unfiltered force of a woman who had watched her crew nearly die. The dissonance screamed. Curran heard it. Everyone heard it. It was not a sound that traveled through air. It traveled through the mind. It was a psychic pulse that flattened thought and erased language and left behind nothing but pure animal terror. The ship's lights went dark. The alarms fell silent. The hum of the reactor stopped. For 3 seconds, there was nothing, no vibration, no noise, no breath, just ringing ears and the smell of burning insulation and the terrible certainty that they had failed. Then the lights came back. The alarms resumed. The reactor hum returned, louder than before, angry at being ignored. And the breach in the prison, the crack through which the dissonance had been feeding, sealed slightly. Not entirely, but enough. Curran let out a breath he did not realize he had been holding. The temperature gauge showed 1 minute 12 seconds to meltdown. "Captain," his voice was rough, "I need you to give me something to be angry about." "Excuse me? I need a target." He looked at the gauge. "The reactor output is dropping. I can push it higher, but I need emotional input to stabilize the frequency modulation. I need to feel something strong enough to carry the shot." Silence. Then Voss said, "You have a target. The thing that tried to eat our species before we even got here." Curran felt something crack in his chest. A grim smile pulled at his mouth. "That will do." He reached for the conduit and felt the power surge. The reactor output jumped by 15%. The temperature gauge climbed faster, the weapon charged. Curran Bellamy stood in the heat and the noise and the vibration. He thought about his daughter. He thought about the quiet life he had wanted. He thought about the galaxy that had tried to take everything from him before he even knew it existed. He used it, every bit of it. The cannon fired again. The beam struck the prison's breach and held. The frequency danced and twisted, spiking with every surge of Curran's buried rage. The breach closed, almost completely. A hairline crack remained, sealed to a thread. The reactor alarms shifted to critical. Curran checked the display, 40 seconds, maybe less. And then the comm lit up. Xylos's voice, a modulated vibration, distorted and urgent, cut through the noise. "Do not sacrifice yourselves. There is another way." Curran stared at the gauge. 38 seconds. He looked at the sealed breach on the monitor. Then he looked at the message from the crystal being that had tried to take the compass. That had warned them. That had watched them charge toward death without blinking. "What other way?" he asked. The line was silent. The gauge ticked past 30 seconds. Xylos's reply came, and it shook with something Curran had never heard from a Flintshard before. It shook with uncertainty. "We do not know. But the architect's records indicate a fail-safe, something hidden, something the dissonance fears more than chaos." Curran turned and looked at the engine room door. The temperature gauge hit 20 seconds. He made a decision. The air in the bridge tasted like smoke and burnt insulation. Emergency strips cast long shadows across the floor. Captain Indira Voss stood at the center of it all. Her hands were braced against the navigation console. Her shoulders shook with exhaustion. Xylos appeared on the main display. Its hologram flickered. The crystalline form shifted. Fragments ground against each other in a sound that might have been distress. The image of the Flintshard emissary was unstable, cutting in and out as the ship's damaged systems struggled to maintain the link. Voss looked up. Her eyes were red-rimmed. She did not speak. The Flintshard's voice came through the bridge speakers, modulated and rough. There is another method. The void compass can anchor the dissonance permanently. A living mind merges with the entity, a link that cannot be broken. Thalia Nix moved from her station. Her fingers left smears of circuit grease on the console edge. Her hands were shaking. The light from the compass in her grip cast pale lines across her face. Thalia's voice cracked. "What do you mean, merges?" Xylos' hologram sharpened for a moment, then blurred again. The mind becomes the container. The dissonance cannot leave. It no longer knows where it ends and the anchor begins. Every Flintshard who attempted this procedure died within seconds. Their consciousness was unmade before the link could stabilize. Voss straightened. Her spine made a sound like dry wood. She pushed herself away from the console and took 2 steps toward the display. "Why would we survive?" Silence stretched across the bridge. The only sound was the low hum of the ship's failing reactor. Thalia held the compass tighter. Its surface glowed with a dim, rhythmic pulse. Xylos' crystals ground together. The human mind is too inconsistent. The dissonance feeds on coherent thought, predictable patterns, logical chains. A human mind is chaotic. It jumps, it contradicts, it holds contradictory states simultaneously. The dissonance cannot form a complete bond with something it cannot fully parse. Thalia stepped forward. Her voice was steady now, not shaking, still. "Do it, I volunteer." Voss turned. Her face was hard. "No, Captain, I have studied this artifact longer than anyone. If anyone understands what is happening, it is me." Thalia's fingers curled around the compass. Her knuckles were white. Voss shook her head. "I cannot order this. I cannot ask anyone to do this." The hologram flickered again. "The compass itself is the mechanism. It does not require physical contact. It requires directed thought. The bearer focuses on the dissonance. The compass does the rest." Voss turned back to the display. Her hand moved before she made a conscious decision. She reached out and took the compass from Thalia's hands. Thalia's mouth opened. No words came out. The compass was warm, warmer than it should have been. It pulsed against Voss's palm like a second heart, like something alive. Voss pressed it against her chest. She closed her eyes. The ship's speakers carried her voice, raw and low. "Broadcast my neural pattern, all channels, full bandwidth. Do it now." Thalia's hands flew across the console. Her voice was barely a whisper. "Done, it is done." The dissonance screamed. The sound came from everywhere at once, from the speakers, from the walls, from inside Voss's own skull. It was not a sound that traveled through air. It traveled through thought, through memory, through the spaces between seconds. Voss's face went slack. Her hands dropped to her sides. The compass fell from her fingers. It hit the deck with a dull thud. Her eyes were open, but they were not her eyes. When she spoke, the voice that came out was not her voice. It was deeper. It resonated in a frequency that made the bridge lights flicker. It sounded like grinding stone, like something ancient dragging itself across the bottom of a deep ocean. But it had human inflection at the edges, a shape that was almost familiar. "Thank you." Thalia took a step back. Her hand went to her mouth. The hologram of Xylos held perfectly still. Its crystals did not grind. They were silent. Voss's eyes snapped open wider. They were black, deep black, no iris, no white, just darkness that seemed to pull the light inward. Her voice changed. It became her voice again, rough, exhausted, but hers. "I contain it now." Thalia's breath caught. Voss's head tilted. Her black eyes scanned the bridge slowly. Her voice dropped lower. "I can feel it thinking. It is afraid of me." The hologram of Xylos vibrated. The sound was unlike anything the crew had heard from it before. It was not anger. It was not confusion. It was something else entirely, something that might have been awe. "A human has done what no other species could achieve." The Flintshard's voice was quiet, barely audible. "The human is still herself, changed, but not lost." Voss raised one hand. She looked at it as if seeing it for the first time. Her fingers curled into a fist. "It wants to leave a piece of itself in me." Her voice was calm, flat, matter-of-fact. "I let it, now it cannot leave at all." She turned toward the viewport. The stars were frozen in place. The ship was dead in space. Emergency power was bleeding away second by second. "Get us home." Her voice cracked slightly. Her shoulders tensed. "I do not know how long I can hold." Thalia moved to the navigation console. Her hands worked the controls. Her breath came in short, sharp gasps. The engines groaned, the ship began to move, slowly, limping, one drive at half power. Curran Bellamy lay on the deck near the bridge entrance. A crewmate had dragged him from the engine room. His face was pale. His chest rose and fell in shallow breaths. He was alive, just barely. Voss did not look at him. She stared at the viewport. Her black eyes reflected nothing. The ship turned. The dim lights of the nearest Federation station appeared on the long-range scanner. A tiny point of light in the darkness. Voss spoke again. Her voice was steady, controlled. It is still trying to understand me. Every time it tries to predict my next thought, I change direction. Her lips pulled into something that was almost a smile. It does not know what to do with a creature that can change its mind. Thalia's hands stopped moving. She stared at her captain. Voss's smile widened. Her black eyes gleamed. It is trapped in here with me, and I am not planning to be predictable. The medbay smelled of antiseptic and ozone. Thalia Nix watched the screen above Voss's head and did not blink. The brainwave patterns scrolled in jagged peaks and valleys. Each one mapped a different emotion: fear, rage, love, grief. But the lines were smoothing out, becoming regular, becoming predictable. Thalia pressed her palm flat against the cold metal edge of the surgical table. Voss lay beneath the scanner's pale beam. Her eyes were open but black. No iris, no pupil. Just two voids that absorbed the light. Her body trembled in fine, constant shivers, like a wire carrying current she could not discharge. Xylos stood in the corner of the room. The Flintshard had sent a single shard of itself, a fist-sized crystal that hovered on a cushion of magnetic field. Its surfaces ground softly together. It had no face to read, but Thalia had learned to interpret its vibration patterns. The grinding had a frantic edge. "The dissonance is learning," Xylos said. Its voice came from the air itself, modulated vibrations that pressed against Thalia's eardrums. "It has sampled every emotional state her mind offers. The variation is diminishing. In approximately 3 rotations, it will have mapped her entirely." Thalia's throat tightened. "It adapts. All predators adapt." She looked at the monitor again. The peaks were lower now, the valleys shallower. Voss could not sustain the chaos. No human could. The body exhausted itself. The mind exhausted itself. And when the well ran dry, the dissonance would simply wait. It had time. It had eternity. Thalia's fingers left greasy smudges on the table edge. "We need to vary her state more aggressively, induce different emotional responses, shock her, fear her, make her feel something new." "She is depleted," Xylos interrupted. The crystal's grinding slowed. "Her neurological reserves are compromised. Inducing acute emotional states now could cause systemic failure." "Then what do you suggest?" Thalia's voice cracked. "You have more experience with this thing than anyone. You lost 112 minds to it. What did you learn?" The crystal went still. Xylos did not answer for a long moment. When it spoke, its vibration was barely audible. "We learned to run. We learned to burn the ships that carried the corrupted. We learned to seal entire systems and never speak of them again. We never learned to win." Thalia pressed her palm against her forehead. The medbay lights hummed. The machine whirred. Voss shuddered on the table. She could not do this. She could not let this woman dissolve. "There is one strategy we did not attempt," Xylos said. Thalia looked up. "We considered it when the first mines were taken. The Concordance debated it for 3 cycles before discarding it as unethical." The crystal rotated slowly, as if examining its own memory. "You possess a technology, consciousness transfer, the creation of a separate copy." Thalia's stomach dropped. "That is not a strategy, that is a death sentence. The original remains anchored to the dissonance. A copy is freed, the copy lives, the prison holds." Xylos's vibration flattened into something almost clinical. "Two functions from one mind. The dissonance does not adapt to a static target. It adapts to a changing one. If the original cannot vary, then the original must be removed from the equation entirely. Let it exist in a fixed state, constant, known, contained. The copy bears the freedom. The copy is not the original." Thalia's voice was sharp, hard. "That is not Voss. That is a recording, a simulation, a ghost in a machine that thinks it is her. I will not do it." The voice came from the table. Thalia froze. Voss's head had turned. Her black eyes stared at Thalia with an expression that should have been impossible through that void. Something human, something tired, something certain. "Captain, that technology is experimental. It is illegal under every Federation charter we signed. The original you stays here. A separate version of you walks away. You will never meet. The copy will not be you. She will remember everything you remember, but she will not be—" "I know." Voss's voice was barely a whisper. Her lips moved like they belonged to someone else. "I know what a copy is. I know what it means. I am the captain of this ship. The choice is mine." Thalia's hands shook. She looked at the screen, at the diminishing peaks, at the dissonance learning. She looked at Xylos, silent, watching. She looked at Voss. "You will not be dead," Thalia said. But you will not be alive either. You will be the same, but you will be different. There is no way to describe what happens to the original after the copy is made. The consciousness that stays, it will feel itself becoming static, fixed. It will know that a version of itself is leaving, and it will never follow. Voss's lips moved. Good. The word hit Thalia like a physical blow. Stood there for 3 breaths. Then she turned to the terminal. Her fingers found the console. The consciousness transfer system was stored in the ship's core, hidden behind 7 security overrides. She unlocked them all. The machine hummed to life. It was a small device, a helmet of white metal, lined with microfilaments that would mesh with the brain's neural structure. A secondary cradle for the receiving body, in this case, a medical surrogate that had never been used. The surrogate stood in the corner. A faceless humanoid form of synthetic flesh and polymer bone. Thalia prepared it. She calibrated the transfer parameters. She set the copy threshold to 100% fidelity, and she hesitated with her hand over the activation key. She will feel it, Thalia said. The original will feel herself being read, copied, peeled away. There is no anesthetic for this. Voss's hand moved. It found Thalia's wrist. The grip was weak. Then let her feel it, Voss said. The copy can live, I can stay, both of us get what we want. Thalia pressed the key. The machine whirred. The noise was soft, rhythmic, like a heartbeat slowing. The room seemed to darken at the edges. Thalia watched the screen as Voss's brainwave patterns froze, captured, scanned. Duplicated, the original's signature flickered. The copy's signature bloomed into existence on a second monitor, clean and sharp and new. Then the original's signal went flatline. For 1 terrible second, the room was silent. Voss's body lay still. Her eyes closed. Her chest did not move. Then the surrogate in the corner took a breath. It gasped. The sound was wet and raw, the first breath of a body that had never breathed before. The faceless head turned. The synthetic hands clutched the edge of the cradle. The eyes, blue human real, opened. Voss looked at Thalia. Voss's voice came from the surrogate's mouth. Did it work? Thalia could not speak. She nodded. The anchored Voss lay motionless on the table. Her eyes were closed. Her brain activity had changed, flattened into a slow, stable rhythm. A waveform that would never vary. A fixed point. The dissonance would find nothing new in her. The prison would hold. Thalia turned to the monitor showing the anchored Voss. The camera feed was grainy. The woman on the table looked peaceful. Her face had relaxed. The shivering had stopped. She looked like someone who had chosen a long sleep and accepted it. The free Voss stood behind Thalia. Her synthetic hands gripped the back of a chair. She stared at the monitor. "Are you still me?" she asked. The question hung in the air. The monitor showed the anchored Voss's eyes open, slowly. The black was gone. Her pupils were brown. Human, warm, she looked at the ceiling as if seeing something very far away. She smiled. "I am the part of you that chose to stay," she said. "That is enough." Thalia's chest ached. She pressed her fist against her sternum as if she could hold her heart still. She had thought humanity's greatest strength was emotion. She had thought it was chaos. She had thought it was the ability to burn. It was not. It was this. The ability to give parts of themselves away and still remain whole, to split in two and call both halves real, to choose the prison so that someone else could walk free. The free Voss reached out and touched the screen. Her fingertips rested against the image of her own face, her own smile. "She is gone," the free Voss said, "but she is not dead. The dissonance is contained." The anchored Voss turned her head, looked directly at the camera, and the prison sealed itself around her. The Federation Council chamber was a sphere of muted light and layered sound. Curran Bellamy stood at the center of the floor. 50 meters of empty space stretched between him and the nearest delegate. The acoustics curved every word back at him. He heard his own voice before it reached the aliens watching from their elevated pods. He told them the story. He started with the ring, the dead star, the frozen crystals and the sphere that Thalia Nix had touched without permission. He told them about Xylos arriving with demands and warnings. He described the dissonance prison and the tendril that had already escaped. He told them what Captain Indira Voss had done to contain it. No visible source, nothing that made sense. The chamber fell into a silence that felt physical. Curran let it sit. He had learned that silence was a tool. Fill it too fast and they would think you were selling something. Let it breathe and they would have to sit with the weight of what they had heard. A delegate from the abyssal species rose from its fluid-filled pod. Its voice came through a translator as a wet rasp. "You are claiming that a single human absorbed an entity that consumed 112 Flintshard mines." "Yes," Curran said. "And this human is still alive." "Two versions of her," Curran said. "The original is a fixed anchor. The copy is on our ship, waiting for me to return." The chamber erupted. A dozen species spoke at once. Translators overlapped and stuttered. Curran caught fragments: quarantine, contamination, unstable variables. A vine-like bloom song representative gestured with its tendrils. The motion was sharp and agitated. A Vorthan delegate flickered in its gas-filled enclosure. Its form condensed and expanded in rapid pulses that the translator read as alarm. Zelix stood beside Curran. Its antennae twitched with visible nervousness. But it did not step back. "Order," the council moderator called. The voice came from a floating disc at the chamber's apex. "The floor recognizes the human delegation's supporting witness." Zelix stepped forward. "I am Zelix of the Federation Diplomatic Corps," it said. Its carapace caught the light and scattered it in amber patterns. "I was present for the events described. I observed the dissonance directly. I observed the human captain contain it through a method my species cannot replicate and does not fully understand." The Bloomsong delegate cut in. "You are defending them." "I am reporting," Zelix said. "The difference matters." It turned to face the full chamber. Its compound eyes reflected the room in 1,000 fractured images. The dissonance fed on predictable thought. That was its strength. Every species in this room evolved toward stability. We suppress, we regulate, we control. This made us vulnerable. The humans did not evolve that way. A Flintshard delegate spoke from the shadows. Its voice was a low grind of crystal on crystal. "You propose that in these flawed creatures lies the key to our survival." The chamber went silent again. Curran felt the weight of every gaze. He straightened. "I do not propose anything," he said. "I am telling you what happened. You can decide what it means." The Flintshard delegate shifted. Its crystals ground together. "And what of the copy, the one who calls herself Voss?" Curran met its faceless stare. "She is waiting. She wants to help. She knows more about the dissonance than any living being. Her original self is the prison. The copy carries the knowledge." A low murmur spread through the chamber. The moderator disc pulsed. "The human delegation requests full research access to the anchored Voss subject for the purpose of studying the dissonance." Curran nodded. "We do, and we ask for the resources to build a permanent containment facility, one that can hold the entity indefinitely." The abyssal delegate waved a tendril. "Impossible. You cannot contain what you cannot predict." Curran's jaw tightened. He thought of anchored Voss, of her smile, of the decision she had made. "We do not need to predict it," he said. "We just need to give it something it cannot process, a mind that refuses to stay fixed, a human mind." The chamber fell into a long silence. Zelix's antennae twitched. The Flintshard delegate spoke again. "The Concordance will not oppose this. We have seen what humans can do. We do not understand it, but we have seen it." Other delegates began to speak. Voices overlapped, some in support, some in doubt. The moderator called for a vote. Curran stood at the center. He did not move. He thought of Thalia still in the lab with the compass. He thought of Curran's daughter waiting on a distant colony. He thought of the two Vosses, one frozen in eternal stillness, one breathing beside him on the ship. The vote proceeded. The lights changed from amber to white. The moderator spoke. "The motion is passed. Human research and containment efforts will receive Federation support. The anchored Voss shall remain under human jurisdiction. The copy is granted diplomatic status." Curran let out a breath he had not realized he was holding. Zelix touched his arm with a thin forelimb. "You did it," it said. Curran shook his head. "No, she did it." He looked up at the viewing gallery where the free Voss stood. Her synthetic face was calm. Her blue eyes met his. She nodded once. The dissonance was still contained, the prison held, and somewhere in the universe a human mind had learned to keep a god trapped inside itself. The council adjourned, but the work had only begun.